We had not been having the best summer workout attendance. And I decided, listen, I'm going to put in place a player-run attendance policy. And we're going to get buy-in from the coaches. And if you don't come to enough workouts, you're not going to be able to play in the opener, or you might not be able to play in the second game even. And so our attendance skyrocketed, but it was very unpopular. When you're 21, 22 years old, in front of your peers, you want to be popular, you want to be liked. But I wanted more to win. And I wanted more for us to perform better. And so I had a chance at a really young age, to basically stand in front of my peers and say, hey, listen, you're going to have to do something that you don't want to do. And we're going to do it for this end goal. Major team sports gave me that opportunity to stand in front of a group of particularly young men and say, this is what we're going to do today, guys. Are you ready? Are you locked in? And if you're not, I'm gonna be on your ass. To be honest with you, I wish we had more of that in politics. I see sometimes people get up in front of particularly in Congress, in front of the caucus, and okay, this is what we should probably do. No. Tell them what you want them to do. Let's get this straight, and then we can have it out, and then let's go out there and execute. That's what I want to do. Maybe that's not always the best approach with every single person, but that's the way that I was trained in leadership.
That was Colin Allred, and you are listening to United States of Sweat, presented by Choose the Hard Way. This is Andrew Vontz.
And I'm Jonathan Kaplan.
We're here today with our guest, Colin Allred. He played in the NFL for 6 years for the Tennessee Titans, had a career-ending neck injury, retired, and Jonathan, he then went to law school to become a civil rights attorney. In 2018, he ran for Congress in the state of Texas, won, and served 3 terms. In 2024, Colin ran for Senate against Ted Cruz, and he lost by 8 points. Now he's back at it. He's trying again in what likely will be a highly competitive Democratic primary and then main election. What you might not know is that growing up in Texas, Colin was the fan of what sport, Jonathan?
Professional cycling, thanks to his fellow Texan, Lance Armstrong.
I found this to be a really fascinating interview, getting to talk about the mentality it took to walk onto the field in the NFL, just to get out there and bang week after week in a profession where, as Colin notes, the injury rate is 100% over the course of a career. We also talk about what Colin does to fit in his workouts. Like all of us, he is very time crunched. And as a candidate, a father, somebody trying to show up and excel in all areas of his life, it's not easy getting in those workouts. And we'll hear how he gets it done in his home gym and a lot of other really interesting topics covered in this. What jumped out at you, Jonathan?
I think his post-football life and making that leap from being a player to being a coach. I don't mean that literally, of course, because he didn't coach football, but as a politician, a leader, he's like one of those guys that you're just like, sign me up, put me in. What do you want me to do? The other thing is you asked a great question about his favorite piece of workout equipment. I'm now a big fan of the slam ball. I'd never done that before, but love it.
Yeah, it's fun to slam the slam ball. And before we dive in, wherever you listen, Jonathan and I would really appreciate it if you could just take a moment to hit 5 stars in your podcast app. And please share this episode with a friend. Sharing is caring. Help United States of Sweat grow. Be sure to subscribe to the Choose the Hard Way newsletter on Substack. That's at alwaythehardway.substack.com. And you can follow me, Andrew Vontz, at HardwayPod on Instagram. And if you want to find anything that I'm talking about in my bio, you will find my link tree. Just dive in there and start swimming. Thank you to the sponsors of this podcast, blockchain.com, Lauf Cycles, who make the world's finest all-road and gravel bikes, the Utald and Segla. And Jonathan, tell us a little bit about what you're up to out there in DC.
Thanks. So I've founded Right Cadence Strategies, where I help individuals and organizations navigate Washington. I especially enjoy helping those outside of Washington find their voice in Washington to shape public policy, manage reputational risk. And I write the Riding With newsletter, a newsletter and podcast exploring the intersection of professional cycling, media, business, culture, politics. Please subscribe. Do not follow me. Subscribe to writingwithkaplan.substack.com.
Do not follow, subscribe. I love Jonathan's Substack. Always look forward to reading it. And I wanted to say, Jonathan, I think as this podcast series illustrates, for senior executives, professional athletes, and political leaders, podcasts are not optional anymore. They are a mission critical channel where real influence is built. That's why I started One Real Voice. That's my consultancy where I coach leaders to help them thrive in high stakes, open ended formats like podcasts, of course, fireside chats, and other dynamic contexts where they have to show up in a public facing way and also in internal communication situations like, a town hall or all hands where you sometimes have to take those dynamic questions and roll with it. If you have a podcast or you're starting one, I also provide strategic guidance to help you create a roadmap that creates high impact today and over time. Set yourself up to win from the beginning and keep on winning with every episode. And Jonathan, a lot of people that I work with are extremely in demand and they're trying to figure out how to navigate all of that inbound to create maximum impact. And I can help you create a strategy to do that effectively as well. When you're ready to be great, DM me at HardwayPod, or you can email hello@onerealvoice.com. And let's get into this conversation with Colin Allred. We really enjoyed it, and we think you're going to love it too. Let's go. Colin, when you go into the gym these days, is that your mentality? Are you going hard or what's happening?
Yeah, I want to suffer, man. I got to be honest with you. Like, I feel like if I do a workout, I want to suffer at some point in that workout. Now, it's different than it was. And I'm not going for heavy weight anymore. I was lifting weights this January and I felt something snap in my elbow. And I thought, oh God, I tore my tricep. I'm just, classic old man, even though I'm 42 or whatever. And but it turned out when I went to the orthopedist, he did a MRI on my elbow and he was like, what did you do? Because he didn't know who I was. And I was like, well, I played football a little bit. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I played in the NFL. And he's like, your elbows are crazy looking. You snapped off a bone spur. That's what it was, And he's like, you didn't tear your tricep. You just snapped off a bone spur. And so I do want to suffer though on the cardio in particular, because I think as I've gotten older, that's obviously what I want to try and maintain. And that's where I have a stationary bike and I have a home gym here in Dallas. Because unfortunately, it's kind of hard for me to go to the gym, to be honest with you. So I have a home gym with a full rack and weights set up, and I have a stationary bike in there. We got a treadmill, and so I'll bring my stationary bike out into the sun, and I'll just try and go as hard as I can out of the saddle for 20 minutes, just to keep my heart rate up, and then I'll do my weight workout. And yeah, I really enjoy that, but I've broken 3 of these stationary bikes because they're not. I don't know. You guys need to put me on to the high quality ones that won't break when a 250-pound guy starts smashing away on it. So.
Wait, is this a Peloton?
No, I don't want a screen. I don't. I want old school, almost Rocky level. I want to get on the bike. I've got my own heart rate stuff that I can monitor my heart rate, right? So I don't need that. I don't need a coach. I'm self-motivated, I guess you could say. I'm listening to my 2000s hardcore rap or something, which is what reminds me of getting back into football mode. 2010s, and so yeah, I don't need the screen, but I have I guess right now I think I have a Schwinn, I think is what I have right now. But anyway, I just break them all after about a year. They all break. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm out of the saddle and I'm going as hard as I can for 20 minutes. And I literally will try and I want to feel at some point during that ride that I think I can't keep going. That's when I feel I had a good cardio. So.
That sounds almost more like Drago mode than Rocky mode. I'm thinking about Drago on the treadmill and the thing just blowing up, smoke coming out of the engine. It sounds pretty intense. So Colin, when you go to the home gym, as you said, you're self-coached. Do you have a specific program or what's your methodology as you think about laying out a training week?
So my strength coach in the NFL, Coach Watterson, who's a friend of mine, Steve Watterson. Hopefully, I might send this to him because he's a great guy. He used to say, "Man, you're born loose and you die stiff," and so he would always say, like, emphasize like stretching, And so I stretch a lot, and I think most of the good athletes that I know, like the professional athletes that I know who stayed limber, are big stretchers, and so like I spend about the first 10 minutes stretching, and I can get up a real sweat going just from stretching, to be honest with you. If you're doing it and you're putting yourself in kind of like a little bit of extremis, then you can get that going. And I want to feel my muscles limbering up, and I have back issues like a lot of football players do, and I had neck surgery, and I had some other surgery, so I have to kind of get those things oiled, so to speak. And then I want to do my cardio, so I'm usually trying to do 20 to 25 minutes, maybe even 30 if I'm feeling like I have a lot of time of cardio, because I'm trying to have a busy day, so I'm trying to get an hour workout in. So I want to do half cardio, half weights. All my strength coaches over the years, I think they base their workouts, at least as far as I can tell, and we would talk about it sometimes, around sort of a concept of if you're pushing something, you should be pulling something, right? So if you're pushing on a bench press, then you should be pulling on a row, right? If you're, I guess, pushing on a bicep, you should pulling on a bicep, pushing on a tricep, right? And so it's all about, like, don't just do one side, right? Try and equalize. But I think the thing that a lot of amateur folks working out probably don't do as much as people like me do is like hamstring and glute and like core work. I'll just like tear up, like, doing hamstring work and trying to get my core, because that's when I know when I get away from that, that's when my back starts hurting, right? And when you're sitting all day and you have a lot of sedentary stuff during the day, all that stuff I think gets tight, and then I'm a big believer in things like foam rollers and kind of rolling out like my IT band, and sort of the pain of rolling over a part that hurts, and then stretching again at the end and doing abs on the ground. And I try to get it in an hour. Sometimes I go over, and my staff, I'm sure loves that, because that means I'm going to be late to whatever I'm doing. But I do think it's necessary, both for me mentally, because I feel prepared for the day. Like I just finished my workout before I talked to you guys. And then also physically, because just as I've gotten older, I think I have to maintain it. But also, I think as you age, if you don't keep some of these core things going, then I think it can kind of go downhill pretty quickly.
Do you have a favorite implement in your garage gym? And I'm thinking the basics are great, right? But like I've got a big tire in my backyard. And I go out, I do my walking meditation in the morning. I do some breathing exercises, a little bit of yoga, and then I walk back past the chickens. I flip that thing 10 times. And, I feel good when I do it. Have you got anything like that? A sled, a tire, anything fun?
I need to get a tire.
The tire is fun, I tell you.
You have inspired me, because there's another thing with the tires that we used to do where we'd get have sledgehammers, and you'd hit the big tires with a sledgehammer, and that's a really good one. But it's a medicine ball, man. Just be honest with you, it's not anything. But like, I can really kick my own butt with a medicine ball, and really, like, when we used to do these things, you go over and you throw down, you go over and you throw down, but also on abs where you go back and then you throw against the wall, and like there's so many different uses. And I think it's my gym is probably about as close, and maybe I can send you guys a picture or something, but it's probably about as close as I can make it to like a basic kind of like 1980s like gym. Like I've got like my kind of RDL machine where like you hook your legs in and you do like the flexors for your hamstring and all that. I've got like the rack and the weights and curly bar and all that, and then I got some dumbbells and kettlebells and weight medicine balls, and then that's about it, man. And but I think I need to get a tire now that you've said that. In fact, I'm gonna see if I don't know how one acquires one of those big tires, though.
You gotta find somebody who works on big rigs or tractors.
Yeah. I'm sure we can find somebody.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you wanted to go full 80s, you need the fully mirrored wall, and you'd have to put in a pec deck, right?
Oh yeah. Well, that's true. So I don't have I don't have any mirrors. I don't want to like I'm not trying to see it,
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I don't. And also, I'm not. I hear these guys being like, "Oh, I'm on testosterone because I have low T or whatever." It's like, no, you're just taking steroids, man. Like, like, I'm sorry, but like, it's just the same thing. You're just taking steroids, And like, I don't do any of that, anything like, I, I think my whole career, we'd see some guys come in, like, especially at Baylor, who'd like walk on every year and they'd be all jacked up, and then they'd be so stiff. And like they would think that like being jacked up was what football was. It's like, no, no, no. You got to move out there, man. You got to be loose. You got to have hips. You got to be able to swivel your hips and run and stop and start. Like it's not just like, yes, being strong is part of it, but functional strength is about being able to put that strength into use into movement.
And I know during your time at Baylor, you got a bit overjacked yourself, right? Didn't you put on a little too much muscle and then that impacted your ability to perform? Can you talk about that a bit? Like what happened? What were you trying to do?
Yeah. So thank you for asking about that because I do think it's a trap that I see athletes fall into. And it was partly a function of that I was just a little bit insecure about like sort of I'd had some injuries and I thought I really needed to like do something to kind of come back. Right. And so I played as a true freshman and I was, I expected that I was going to keep playing, but then my linebacker coach left and I got injured. And so I got redshirted in my sophomore year, which I thought was kind of strange because I was going to miss half the season, maybe, or not even half the season, maybe the first third of the season with this injury. And I thought, well, I can come back. Why are you redshirting me? And but while I was redshirting, I decided to start just lifting a lot and eating a lot because I came in to Baylor probably 220 pounds, like not a no, not like now that's kind of normal for linebackers. But back then I was like probably 15, 30, 20 pounds below what a lot of the Big 12 linebackers were. And so I got up to like 250, 255. And I was like, yeah, I'm strong now. And then like next year when I got on the field, I was slow. And I didn't like how I was looking on the tape. And I just, anyway, and so they started playing me at defensive end some. I even played a few downs like on pass rush situations as like a defensive tackle, like on the line. Like these are things I never would have imagined that I was going to do. And so that off season, I decided to drop 20 pounds and I went back down to like maybe even 25 pounds, went down to like 228, 230. And I had a really good last couple years based on that. And it was all about just remembering that just what I just said, football is not actually about being the strongest. There are some guys, and I played against them in the NFL, like who were just incredibly strong and who that made them unstoppable, but they still had speed and they still had agility. And if you don't have speed and agility, it does not matter how strong you are. It does not matter, like, that at the point of contact, you would win that battle because you'll never get to the point of contact. Right. And I think that was a lesson I had to learn.
And when you shifted from the NFL to law school, can you talk about how your routine changed, what you did to stay sane during, 3 years of law school? And then especially after that on the campaign trail, how do you maintain any semblance of fitness?
Well, I always joke that when I got to law school, I was less than a year off the operating table before I was like in law school. So it was a very quick transition because I got injured in October against the Cowboys. I had neck surgery, fusion surgery on my neck in that month. And then like by next August, I was in class, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and I can kind of tell you about it. But so I got there, and I felt I was like not a normal person. You know what I mean? Like, and I felt kind of like a panther among people. Like I was like my reactions and like how I treated myself was like not applicable to normal life, right? Like, and like in football, you're just always like so ready to go, and like that's not law school, you know. And I remember doing working out in the like the school gym or whatever, and this guy being like, "Man, really good set," and I was like, "Don't start with me, man. Like you don't know who you're talking to, you know what I mean?" And I was like, "Thanks, buddy," and I was hitting it really hard in law school, like working out really hard, and I was running really hard, and I hadn't really run long distance ever, and I started having really severe shin splints. And I was like, what is this, man? Like, I'm trying to get in shape. I'm trying to stay in shape. And I just realized I just really needed to calm down, honestly. And like, I don't need to be benching 315 or whatever. Like, what's the point at this, at this stage? Like, that's not what I'm going for. I don't have like we used to have to test on bench press every off season. I'm not going to be tested, and so I really started calming down a bit around it and started thinking, okay, well, what do I want my long-term health to be in terms of like fitness? And I felt like I really wanted to slim down and lose some of the muscle mass and just take a little bit of the weight off my joints. And so I, started pursuing that. And part of that was doing less weight, higher reps in terms of weightlifting, which I would recommend to anybody if you're it's really about keeping your heart rate up and making sure that for that entire period that you're burning calories. And you'll be getting stronger too, but you don't need to build mass as much. And I cut way back on biggest thing for me was changing my diet. Because I was eating 5 times a day in the NFL. And I was having the protein that I ate and like the level of, calories that I was taking in was just not sustainable for normal life, and, but that's really what I knew. And it's kind of hard to explain to you probably just like how quickly that transition happened for me. But then how all of a sudden it was like, okay, so what am I supposed to have for food now? And I was like, well, I guess I'll just eat what I always eat. I'll have like 4 or 5, hard boiled eggs for breakfast, and like, that's not what you need to sustain you. And when you're going to be sitting in class, and so I cut out like red meat, I cut out fried food, and then, so it cut way back on some of the stuff that I was doing, and that was a big transition. And then I was working as a lawyer, and I worked in the Obama administration. You know, when I started running for office, I think I went through a period where I probably wasn't working out like the way I wanted to be. And then after I got elected, my wife and I had our first son, Jordan, a month into my term in Congress. And after that, I went like a couple years without really getting a solid like workout schedule. And I gained weight and I didn't like how I looked, but I was like doing a lot of like any free time I had, I was going to spend it with like the baby and my wife, and then we had another son. And so then it all kind of like, kept going in terms of like the free time I had was like my dad time, and so I stopped really having as much time for myself. And I think as my kids got older, what I realized was like, number one, I wasn't being able to, like, I was so stiff. I felt like I was having a hard time playing with them, and like getting up and down off the ground was really hard. And I didn't like how I looked, and for politicians, they're taking pictures of you and you're like, oh God, I hate that look, and like, as an athlete, I'm thinking, what am I doing? Right. And so I realized like, part of being a good dad and being a good husband is also taking care of yourself, because I didn't know my father growing up is basically what I should probably say here. And so I'm like a really involved dad. Like I was the first member of Congress to ever take paternity leave. Like I took, weeks off when my first son was born. I took a month off when my second son was born. My staff and everybody knows that if there's a conflict between like going to an event or like doing something that my kids need me to do, like they know, don't even ask, cause like I'm going to do the thing with my kids. And that's at times hurt me, quite honestly. And politics, people say, well, you didn't come to something. I'm like, well, I had some responsibilities at home, but I think it also has kept me really grounded. And so I started doing what I think a lot of dads do, which is just getting up early and being like, okay, well, if I can't work out during the day, I'm going to have to work out before everybody gets up. And that's kind of the cycle that I'm in now.
Colin, in talking to other dads about how they manage that transition, as you noted, it's highly disruptive to your sleep, of course, for you and for your wife. And you start having to shuffle things around. And for you, it ended up being the case that getting up early and getting it in, something that I do is I have a TRX in my car. I take my Go Ruck with a water bag in it everywhere I go. My kids are 6 and 9, so if we hit a playground, my kids know the TRX is going up. Dad's getting in some pull-ups.
I love that.
They tell me how weird I am, but that's something that I try to share with other dads because I think a lot of people end up in this position, and especially with the extra cortisol from not sleeping, like you just start packing on weight. It becomes really difficult. Was there anything else that you did besides getting up early? Anything you did with your nutrition to try to make better choices just so you could get in what you needed to do to take care of yourself a little better?
That's such a great point, and I'm still working on this, so I don't want to act like I've got it all down. But I think a lot of times we would eat after like bedtime, and that led to eating really late at night, you know, and then like you said, because I have a 4 and 6-year-old, and so uh, we're just now getting to the period where they don't get up in the night really at
Right.
this point, and but before that they'd be getting up at some point, so like I would just be eating a lot late, and um, and for me that was a something that I would just kind of do, like if they were up, like okay, I'll just have a snack while they're trying to get them back to sleep or whatever, and that's just nutrition wise, that's just terrible in terms of like when to eat and especially what I was eating. It was mostly like cheese or something, Um, and so I do try and set a time where after this time I'm just not going to eat anymore. And yeah, this is something that I still am working on, so don't hold me to it at all times. But in general, every time I've tried to lose and cut down on like I don't want to say lose weight because I think losing weight is the wrong term. But whenever I try to feel like I'm in a healthier place, I'm trying to drink less of my calories and eat less late at night, right? And so those are my two kind of touchstones. Because at least for me, like I kind of want to have like a Coke or something, and that's a ton of calories, ton of sugar, right? But then also like the eating late at night thing is always like it always messes me up both in terms of like my gastrointestinal stuff, and also you don't sleep as well, So, but I think it's just a real struggle, and I really like that idea about like just letting your kids go, play and getting into something because like I'll be sitting there, like at swim lessons or something, for an hour, and maybe now I just knock out some push-ups or something, and they can just look at me funny if they want, So
Yeah, Andrew's an influencer, so I've adopted that at soccer practice. And the parents look at I think they will look at me with envy and like I'm like what kind of weirdo is this? The other trap I think new parents fall into. It's like, my son doesn't finish dinner, and it's like what
yeah.
people are going to starve you. So then you end up eating it, and I think that's initially
Always got to clean the plate. Yeah.
Right. So just to take this a step further on the campaign trail, I mean, it can't be easy. I mean, I've been there. I've worked for members of Congress. I just think as a reporter, a political journalist, I think it's brutal. What do you do?
I don't eat at events usually, so that's like part of it. So I at least avoid that. Although sometimes I'll eat a little bit, um, but I think it's mostly just every morning I'll get a workout in, and I hate to say this, but sometimes when I'm on the road, I have more time to work out than when I'm at home. Because like when I'm at home, I'm doing my thing with my kids, and I want to make sure that they get as much time with me as possible from the moment they wake up to like when they're up and I'm like doing something, I'm like, oh, I got to go see them because like now's my time with them, right? And I want them to remember that and to say, okay, I saw Dad this morning, um, and so when I'm on the road though, I don't have that same limitation. Although we do FaceTime, um, every pretty much every morning and every evening. Sometimes if things are melting down, it might not work out, but
Yeah.
yeah. But I do think on the road, I sometimes have more time for working out, um, and I think it's just a big part for me of getting into my day. And so if I haven't done it, I'm probably not gonna have a good day, and at least that's probably partly self-fulfilling, right? But I do feel like it's a necessary part of it.
Do you have staff write in the workout schedule? Just say, this is your time.
No, although I think it's implied, because it's like, okay, if there's, yeah, like it's implied. So that's a good question, but I don't think that we don't have, it's not scheduled. But it's like before the things start, I'll be working out, you know.
To go back to the NFL for a moment, when you were on the practice team and then made the transition to actually going onto the team, what was your mentality? And, you mentioned you had this animalistic mentality when you were in the NFL, switched on,
Yeah.
full on all the time. What was it like on the practice team, and what was your mentality about what was possible for you and how you were going to get there?
Yeah. So it's changed a little bit because now, back then we had 53 guys on the active roster and an 8-person practice squad, and the practice squad was usually what would in other sports would probably be called like a developmental team or something, where like you're practicing with the team and you're doing all the scout team stuff, and you're also preparing for the week each week in case you get called up. And for me it was really good because I had gotten cut my first year, even though I shouldn't probably have been. And the next year with a new GM, they kept me, and they cut a couple of the folks that they had drafted to keep me. And so that was a real sign of confidence, and they kept me there, as like, okay, whenever somebody goes down, like you'll step in. And so, but I took it very seriously as like, okay, any week I could be called up, and it could happen any time in the week. And so I would practice, but then I would also do like running at the end of practice, because I felt like the one thing I don't want to do is be sucking wind in my first game, you know. And the way it worked out was that was exactly what happened on a Friday. So we obviously play on Sundays. A friend of mine pulled his calf in practice. Fridays for us is special teams day. So at least most teams in the league, Wednesday will be first down and second down. Thursdays will be third down and third down and kind of short yardage. And so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will be special teams, 2-minute drill, and a few special situations. And then Saturday's walkthrough, Sunday's game, right? So on the Friday special teams day, a friend of mine running down on a practice kickoff pulls his calf. They call me up immediately, and I'm playing on Sunday in Kansas City. And I get out there, and on the first kickoff, I make the tackle. I'm having a great time. Then another friend of mine, who was the starting middle linebacker, tears up his shoulder on like a tackle. And so all of a sudden now I'm playing defense. And it's not just special teams. And so now and like if I hadn't stayed in shape, I would have been like, up a creek, right? And so I took it very seriously, like the prep work. And I think the thing about being a professional athlete that I learned over the course of my 5 years, and that I saw that differentiated people, was that the preparation and the seriousness around it is what kept you in the league or kept you on a team. Like everybody's good, right? Everybody has something that they are able to do that has led them to get to this point to have a chance to play in the NFL. But then from there, what's going to separate you is the mental side of it, and being prepared, being in shape, getting your rest, and showing up every day at the facility, being the same person, being consistent, being somebody they can rely on. And I took a lot of pride in that I was like, I think I was a kind of a pro's pro. Like I got the most out of my ability. Like I wasn't, at least for NFL terms, a physical freak. So I had to maximize, my ability as a linebacker. And I think I did. I mean, I got my, 5 years in, but 4 years playing. I would have kept playing if I hadn't gotten injured. My career would have kept going. So, I think that's one thing I appreciated about that time, was learning that, because it also helped me in everything else I've done since then. I have a baseline belief that I can outwork pretty much anybody around me.
How did you manage the specter of injury, which is just constant in the NFL? And for you, it's how your career ended, as is the case for most players. How do you go out there and do that, knowing this could happen at any moment?
It's such a good question, because I do think in football, the moment you're worried about it is the moment you probably should stop. And I saw that happen to guys, and some of the best players I played with, they get an injury, they come back from it, and there's a little hesitation when they come back, and then you get hurt again, because that little hesitation is going to lead you to get hurt. And I really believe that this is a sport that has to, at least at the professional level, it has to be played on the cutting edge. It has to be played like 100% every play. And that's one thing. I've watched a high school game and a college game this weekend. I went to a high school game with South Oak Cliff and Duncanville on Friday, and I watched Baylor and SMU on Saturday. And I was just thinking, like, I watched some of the players and I saw them kind of jogging a little bit on plays. And I was thinking, not in the NFL. On the NFL, you will be sprinting that play. You will, even if you're not in on the tackle, you will be sprinting. You will get to that ball. You will not have what we call a loaf, because they're going to count loafs, right? And loafing is not your way into the NFL, right? And so, but it's also just played on such a cutting edge. And so, like, for me, that I felt it starting to happen, which was that I started getting these stingers where if I hit somebody a certain way, I'd get my nerve would get twinged, and I'd lose feeling in my fingers, and I'd get this real severe shock, and it felt like you're being electrocuted. And so I started trying to avoid getting a stinger. And when you try and start avoiding it, then you start doing things that you wouldn't normally do, and then I'd get other injuries, right? But before all that started, I think this is why it's so much a young person's game. I was reckless, man. I was just reckless. Like I'd run down on kickoff and think, get in my way if you want to. I'm not going to stop. Like, I'm going to run full speed into you, and we're going to find out, and I'm not kidding, man. Like, that was back during the wedge days. They'd form a wedge, and I'm like, okay, let's go. Like, we're going to find out today, and I would often think I'm going to run through this person, and it would hurt sometimes. But that's kind of what separated me, and that's how I was able to be effective. And I just didn't worry about it. And then as you get a little older, you start to think about it. And then you start thinking, oh, that kind of hurts, And I just think that the specter of injury, football has 100% injury rate, is what we always say. It's like there's a 100% chance that you're going to get injured. The only question is, what's it going to be, right? Even Tom Brady got injured, right? Like, he tore his ACL, and he had other injuries over the years, I'm sure, that I can't remember. Peyton Manning had the same surgery I had, fusion surgery. So, like, you're going to get injured. And I think you have to be fearless in that regard, because once you start hesitating, your career is probably going to come to an end.
Yeah, I think in cycling, which Andrew and I probably know best, is like there's two types of riders, those that have crashed and those that will. And we've seen plenty of examples of riders, the pros, who have had a hard crash and they come back, and just that little hesitation can kind of not derail a career, but change a career. So I'm just curious,
I guess I would know more about it than me, but was it Vingegaard, had that crash, and on the downhill, it seemed like he wasn't descending as fast,
Yeah. Your stuff. You follow closely. It's impressive.
Yeah, no, it's true. I'm not kidding. We do like that show. Yeah.
So I know at Baylor you were captain of the team, and then your experience in the NFL. What did you learn about leadership that you brought into Congress?
I tell people this all the time. I think outside of the military, which is obviously different and more important, there's not a lot of experiences in like normal life that give you a chance at a young age to get exposure to real leadership, other than like major athletics and team sports. For me at Baylor, my senior year, we had not been having the best summer workout attendance for various reasons. It wasn't all people being lazy. Part of it was just the summer school schedule and stuff like that. Anyway, and I decided, listen, we're going to have a player. I'm going to put in place a player-run attendance policy, and we're going to get buy-in from the coaches. And if you don't come to enough workouts, you're not going to be able to play in the opener, or you might not be able to play in the second game even. And so our attendance like skyrocketed, but it was very unpopular. And when you're 21, 22 years old, in front of your peers, like, you want to be popular, you want to be liked. But I wanted more to win, and I wanted more for us to perform better. And so I had a chance at a really young age, to basically, you know, stand in front of my peers and say, "Hey, listen, you're going to have to do something that you don't want to do, and we're going to do it for this end goal." And we didn't have a great team, but it was the best team that we'd had at Baylor at that point in the Big 12 that year, even though we weren't that talented, to be honest with you. Looking back on it, I'm kind of shocked by it. And I just do think that major team sports gave me that opportunity to stand in front of a group of particularly young men and say, "This is what we're going to do today, guys. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Are you ready? Are you locked in? All right. And if you're not, I'm gonna be on your ass. Okay." And to be honest with you, I wish we had more of that in politics. Like, like I see sometimes people get up in front of, like, particularly like in Congress, like in front of the caucus, and like, "Okay, this is what we should probably do." I mean, no. Tell them what you want them to do. Okay, let's get this straight. All right, and then we can have it out, and then let's go out there and execute. That's what I want to do, right? And I think maybe that's not always the best approach with every single person, but that's the way that I was trained in leadership. And I do think that team sports for me also taught me to be someone who could follow proactively. And what I mean by that is everybody has to be a leader in their own right, even if you're not the captain. You can lead in different ways by doing your work the right way, by being a good example in your meeting room, by being a good example in the weight room, good example, in the lunchroom. And so you're all setting a team culture together. And you're all part of either a positive culture or a negative culture. And I think even if you don't have that title, you can actively be somebody who contributes to the positive, impacts of whatever your organization is trying to do. And I think I learned that as well in the NFL, where, like, I was a model teammate, and I was somebody who, if you wanted to know how to conduct yourself for a rookie, you could follow what I was doing in many cases. Not that I was going to be as talented as you. You're probably more talented than me. But if you want to know how to maximize your talent, you can do some of what I'm doing. And I think that, that helped me so much in other areas where I don't need to be the person who gets all the credit for something. I don't need to pass a bill. We need 218 votes in the House. We need 60 votes in the Senate. We have to have a president sign it. Like, if everybody's just going to be me, 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 then you're probably not going to get it done. But I can contribute towards a positive culture of, okay, how do we find a solution to this? And I think that's helped me a lot, to where I don't have some of the graspingness of I see from some folks, where it's like, hey man, just chill out, okay, just calm down. Like, you're gonna get credit. You don't have to grasp. In fact, you'll get more credit from folks who see you doing the hard work and then say, "I got to also point out that so and so did a really good job today. Like, Jonathan was really helpful today, and he was really helpful in getting this bill across the line." But if you're grasping the whole time,
And is that the mentality you bring to running your, when you ran a congressional office, and now when you're running a campaign?
yeah, I mean, I try to hire folks and empower them, and I want them to feel like that they can be themselves, and that they don't have to. I'm not gonna. I never yell. There's never gonna be a moment where we're gonna have, like, me yelling or people being called to task. We're gonna set an expectation that a certain level of work is gonna be done, and if it's not, then we're just gonna have a conversation about it. And if it doesn't get fixed, then we're gonna have to move on. Like, that's the way I've always thought is the fairest way to approach, being an employer. Um, and I try and treat everybody with dignity and respect, and give them the space to express themselves, because that's one thing I think that Coach Fisher, my coach for the Titans, was good at. I think there were some other things that we probably could have cleaned up a little bit, but he was very good at giving players, like, the room to express themselves so their talent could show. And part of that is you have expectations, but you don't block it in, so they have to do things that lacks creativity. And I think that's always the goal that I want to set. But we've had remarkably, and Jonathan, I think you probably know some examples that are opposite, but I have remarkably
Yes, I do.
little turnover, you know, in my offices over the years. Like, I have people who worked for me for 7, 8 years, and who,
Hmm.
would probably continue for as long as we can work together, and I think I've seen on the Hill that was a little uncommon, the level of stability that we had.
You mentioned the worlds of professional sports and the military, and this is certainly not axiomatic, but I have my friend Randy Hetrick on, who was a former Team 6 Navy SEAL.
Mm.
He was my boss for 4 years when I was at TRX. And he mentioned the same thing, and that as a leader in the private sector, there wasn't the same mission as there was when he was in the world's most elite military unit. So now that you're in another context, what is the mission that you rally your team around in this next phase of where you're headed as a political operator?
That's a great question. I like that. I mean, I think it's such a good point because obviously in football we had a game to win and we had a season to do well in. But even then, I think the goal was not really to win the game; it was to perform as well as we could. And because sometimes you'll perform well and you don't win the game. Um, and I think athletes know that. I think in politics that can happen as well. Um, and so I think what I'm always trying to build is a team that can perform to the best of its abilities and to maximize what we could have put out there in that election cycle or in that debate or whatever the individual test may be. And the end goal, I think, isn't just to win, although that's everybody wants to win. I'm one of the biggest competitors that you'll come across. But that if you performed well and you did everything you could, that you'll feel good about it no matter what, right? And so I do think that's the goal is to maximize our sort of potential, and I think also to do it. For me, it's at least important that we do it consistent with our values. And I think that because I've had multiple careers, I realized there's like life outside of this, and I don't feel the sense and maybe it's to my detriment, to be honest with you, that I will win it all, that I'll do anything to win and that I'll win at all costs. And I don't care what values no, that's not me. And to be honest, I wouldn't be good at doing that. So I'm not going to try, So for me, it has to be like, okay, we're going to be who we are. And, if that's good, and we're going to be the best that we can be at it. And if that's what people want, then great. And if it's not, then we accept that, And I really want people to feel good about themselves and the work they did when they work with me and for me. And I want the people who were involved in it, like our volunteers and all that, to feel like they were part of something that was a positive. When I first ran for Congress in 2018, I knew we were in good shape. When a few months before the election, people were bringing like their kids in little red wagons to go, knock on doors, and they were promising them like, if you do this, we'll get some ice cream, and I'd see like these carloads of families coming, and I knew it'd become a community positive, a net positive for the community. And I felt at that time, and I wrote it down, and I can show it to you, that no matter what happens this election, I feel like we've succeeded in this, and it was something I really still feel very proud of.
Thanks for joining us. I hope in 2027 we can call you Senator. And just to end, where should people go if they want to support you?
You can go to colinallred.com. We also have all of our links to our socials and all the various things that we're doing now. We got a Substack now, like you guys, so we're doing a lot of the different things.
The number one way to support Choose the Hard Way is to become a paid subscriber to my Substack, alwaysthehardway.substack.com. That's where I share my reflections on these interviews and write about engaged mindfulness, bikes, and life. For senior executives, professional athletes, political leaders, and venture partners, podcasts aren't optional anymore. They're mission critical. At One Real Voice, I coach leaders and organizations to help them thrive as storytellers and stand out in the long-form podcast conversations where real influence is built. If you have a podcast or you're starting one, I also provide strategic guidance to help you create a roadmap that works today and over time. Set yourself up to win from the beginning and keep on winning with every episode. When you're ready to be great, DM me at HardwayPod or send an email to hello@onerealvoice.com. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, please take a moment to hit subscribe and do humanity a favor when you hit 5 stars. Crypto curious? With over $1 trillion in transactions to date, blockchain.com is your trusted partner on your crypto journey. Go to blockchain.com to get started today. No experience required. Lauf is the Apple of bike design, and they make elegant products that just work better than everything else. That's why I ride Lauf bikes. You can check them out at laufcycles.com. This podcast is also brought to you by my best-in-class partners at Palm Tree Podco. They're a full-service podcast studio with end-to-end services to help any brand, business, or individual take a strategic approach and stand out. Find them at palmtreepodco.com. You can find all of those links in the show notes. And I'd love to hear from you. DM me at HardwayPod on Instagram and let me know what you think about this episode. Happy listening and keep on riding.